According to me, we should be good to go.
So you guys can all see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect.
Good to go. Thank you.
According to me,
So today we wanted to give you an update on the community development project. Just as a recap, the deliverables for this project are a Main Street plan, community streetscape plan, the signage and wayfinding plan, all of which will include costing and implementation, as well as some supporting project documents, including an engagement summary, capital development strategy, and then what we are updating you today on, which is the context review, site inventory analysis and observations interim report, which I'm not going to say the whole title again. So for the context review report, several key studies have provided the Cactus Corridor region and Hana with a foundation for this project. These studies created a basis for discussion and action relating to growth, community values, and needs. And they all relate to development opportunities, funding challenges, and models of government. And we drew three conclusions from these studies, from the review of the studies. The first is that the community expects outcomes that are implementable and reflect the consensus priorities of recently completed reports, studies, and plans. The second is that decision makers and the community must work collaboratively together in order to realize these revitalization projects. And finally, revitalization success will depend on local capital and operational investments and commitments. And the second half of the report was dealing with the site analysis. The information that we gathered is divided into three categories: placemaking, streetscapes, and signage and wayfinding. I'm just going to move all of our little pictures over here. So placemaking is creating interesting spaces that attract people. The design decisions are based on what the community needs. Placemaking works within the context of the adjacent buildings and amenities and aims to achieve the community's vision for public spaces. With placemaking, we can strategically place amenities to encourage social interaction. So the elements of placemaking that we looked at were sense of place, beautification, and gateways. And I'll talk about those in a minute. Tactical urbanism, the fourth one there, is a term that I'm not sure if everybody might be familiar with or not. It is actually a grassroots, I guess it's a description of a grassroots way of doing things. So a community group or a group of people get together and they, for example, put benches out in front of their storefronts downtown, and they create a very far-reaching positive impact on the public realm for little cost, and it's not top down or anything. This is just the community's decided this is what they want to see, and those are typically very effective and very cost effective as well. So a sense of place is what makes the community unique. It refers to the feelings and emotions that are felt when a space is entered or experienced. Sense of place reflects and magnifies the identity of the community. And at our previous meeting, we talked about the idea of modern agriculture as the sense of place, the identity for the community of Hana. Beautification creates interesting spaces that attract people and convey activity. It enhances the sense of place of the community. In Hana, there are lots of murals and planters and banners, although not right now, that are seen. So a lot of beautification has already taken place throughout the downtown, certainly. The murals indicate, I know some of them are old, some of them are new. They indicate that people care about the place and it promotes activity. Beautification can also incorporate historical elements, either directly through signage, for example, the sign in this planter here, or images that are posted, or indirectly, for example, the style of site furniture that's selected, or the font of signs. A gateway is a sequence of views that announces arrival. And gateway experiences should reflect the specialness of the place. Hannah has about 7 or 8 signs, depending on which direction that you're approaching from the highway, but only a few of them actually contribute to the gateway experience that describe Hannah's specialness. A lot of them are just the standard Alberta transportation signs that every community has. So the ones that are really special are the indoor rodeo sign, the actual wooden sign, which we discussed needs to be replaced, especially because one fell down. And then the electronic sign, which is, I think, a really wonderful gateway experience. It's surrounded by vegetation. It shows that people care about that area. The vegetation is tall, so it stands out from the prairie. And it's visible and it has current information on it. So people driving by can look at it and say, oh, you know, that although I can't necessarily read exactly what it says, or I know exactly what the event refers to, there's stuff going on. There's activity here, and it's draws people in, makes them a little bit interested in what's going on. So the second category of information is streetscapes. And an attractive streetscape will promote activity. Streetscapes extend from building edge to building edge and include sidewalks, roads, bike lanes, street trees, and gathering areas. Walking through Hannah, it's clear that there's a need for a cohesive and a unifying design intent that makes the streetscapes reflect the sense of place that we're trying to convey. And also in the downtown blocks, it seems that there's a prioritization of vehicles over pedestrians. So if the street's about 20 meters wide, 3 meters of that is dedicated to pedestrians and the rest to vehicles. So that ratio needs to be looked at to see if that's really the priority that the streetscape should have. And the quality of the sidewalk affects the pedestrian experience as well. In most of the residential communities, boulevards separate pedestrians from the roadways and provide room for street trees, grass, vegetation, and other beautification elements. So Hannah's quite fortunate to have all these boulevards. There are a few sidewalks where there's an integral rolled curb attached to it. We can call that a mono walk, perhaps. Problems occur with those when the cross slope is a little bit too high, and actually instead of just shedding water into the road, it actually directs wheeled vehicles like strollers and walkers into the road, so that it's not a very comfortable place to walk anymore. And in general, downtown sidewalks should be wide enough for passing comfortably and have wider areas to accommodate spontaneous conversations that might occur. Hannah has quite narrow sidewalks in the downtown. They're lacking a lot of patios. Legion Park is a really good start to creating a gathering place, but there is a lot of opportunity to make the sidewalk experience much more comfortable. And active frontages create interesting environments for pedestrians in the downtown area. An active frontage is created by a door that you can go in or that might open and let somebody out, windows that you can see into and watch people working or shopping, perhaps second floor balconies where people are sitting and having a coffee and watching the passersby below. And active frontages are also created when there are no blank walls. So if there's a mural or vegetation or vines or something else that activates that wall so that it's not just blank, making people uncomfortable to walk by. In downtown Hannah, there are numerous examples of active frontages. I've included a few here. All the buildings are directly on the sidewalk, which really creates a really good buzz of activity. And there are murals on some of the empty buildings, which really create I guess create the perception that these buildings are cared for and that, you know, people are interested in what happens in this area. So there's not a lot to do, I think, except for maybe some of the empty buildings could perhaps be used, maybe some display or something on the inside to give them a little more life so they're not just empty. And street trees are an integral part of the streetscape as well. They define the borders of spaces and create welcoming and comfortable spaces for pedestrians. They provide visual interest, shade, protection from the wind, and shelter, and they enhance the well-being of people. It's been proven that trees and in urban settings are better for your mental health when you go for a walk. So in Hannah, the residential community is quite well treated. Of course, you can always have more. Trees are really important, speaking from a landscape design point of view. But downtown, there are no trees, and there's a simple reason for that. There's just no space for them. So that also means, though, that there's no demarcation between the pedestrian environment and the roadway environment, and there's no protection for the elements and definition of a human-scaled space. So there is quite an opportunity, I think, to integrate street trees into new streetscapes downtown. And signage and wayfinding is the third category. Wayfinding strategies are used to make a place comprehensible and easy to get around in. Wayfinding helps newcomers understand what is important and how to get around and how to get there. In Hannah, there doesn't seem to be a cohesive strategy. The sign on the right shows that there are a number of signs that are pointing to downtown, but they also look like street signs. So you might not key in that that's not a street sign, that it's actually a wayfinding sign. And then the one that precedes those signs, the Business District Pioneer Village sign, it's a little bit confusing. Is the business district the same as downtown? Is it different? So some sort of cohesive strategy is needed. And lighting also creates a comfortable pedestrian experience and helps you see where you want to go. So it helps with wayfinding. The street lights downtown are very tall. They're meant for illuminating the traffic and the roadway, not necessarily the pedestrian environment. Memorial Park does have some nice street lights that are at a more pedestrian scale and create that sense of comfort. So our proposed engagement for the process starts in April with step 1 and 2. The first is we'd like to go to the school and ask the youth for ideas about the identity of Hannah, and then integrate those ideas into what we take out to the public in our public engagement drawings. And then also in April, some key stakeholder interviews with Main Street businesses to really get them on side to participate in the downtown improvement program and in this whole revitalization program. And then step 3 would begin in May with the farmers market, and then continue in June with farmers markets, go to the seniors lodge, any open air markets downtown if they have them similar to last year, pop-ups to ask people some quick questions, which of these alternatives do you like? Something quick, but then give an opportunity for some more discussion if they'd like to have that. And then in step 4 is having a storefront in the month of June in the downtown, so we can activate a little bit of Main Street. We'd be in the storefront probably a couple days a week, and otherwise have some interesting window display for people to get some information about the project. And that would be an opportunity to get a little bit more discussion about the alternatives. And then finally a report back, which is key to every engagement process as well. And that is the end of my presentation. So any questions?
All right, Council. Anybody with any questions regarding the process? Councillor Olson.
I don't know if we're done sharing the screen. I don't know if we want to move that off of there now too, so people can see, but there. Just wanted to give some feedback. There's a couple ideas we haven't seen in there with the pop-ups and different things. We've been the target of many consultants and ideas for this here. I'm confident our business owners and residents can make the town more beautiful, and they know what to do. I'd really like to see a step in there where, you know, you help secure funding or do something. I mean, that's we've had a lot of reports and a lot of good ideas in there. Of course, we know trees are important. We know it's important to have a busy downtown, but it's the financial side of it that is the burden and what really slows it down for business owners and residences. So that's what's important to me, is we need to secure funding. We've gone through this for a while, and that's the step that we truly need. So if that's any part of it that you're able to help out with, that would be the important part for me.
I think some of the goal, Councillor Olson, is to utilize some of the funding coming from WD through the infrastructure dollars that are available. I guess it depends on what the total cost of the project might be. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Neal, I think that was the goal with that. So we may have access to significant dollars through that WD funding that's coming.
Yeah, that would be, I think the part, certainly if Jen or Paul have some other financial avenues that we may, proceed with. I think this report and what we'll get through it at the end of the day will put us in good spot to then be able to apply and be in a better position to be successful in applying for some of these grants. And we've talked about the WD infrastructure one, and I think that's obviously a primary one that we would be going after for the downtown. The other comment I just want to make in regards to funding, there is some funding in this pocket for our signage. So if when the report comes back and there's some recommendations to council on our signage, whether it's wayfinding signage, whether it's entrance signing, there is some money set aside, approved by WED, to actually implement that signage. So that's a little bit of capital dollars there. I know it's not huge dollars, but it's something that we can move forward on using WED dollars. But the larger impact downtown redevelopment certainly will be a significant cost, especially considering that how we move forward, we'll want to deal with the underground as well as the above ground. And I know people won't see the underground, but it's important that the underground be taken care of, and that's going to be a significant component of the costs to do some downtown redevelopment. So that's kind of the goal, I hope, from the end of this. I'd love if Jen or Paul said, yeah, you can apply here and you can get $2 million. I'm not expecting that from them. I'm expecting a solid report that with solid information that we can then go to WED as our number one priority, as well as if there's any other opportunities that may come up that would fit this, we certainly would be prepared to move forward on them too. Every opportunity is an opportunity we need to take. So.
Thank you. Councillor Bowden?
Yes, thank you. That was quite an enlightening report. I think it's a lot of what we have seen before, as Councillor Olson had mentioned. But if funding is available, is there a target date to start, as far as signage, and so that the residents can actually see something materialize out of another study?
I think Councillor Bowden, just like what Kim said, is once we have the final report of this project, then we can take it to WD and say, hey, this is our cost. Is this something that falls within the parameters? Because I know there are some parameters within the WD funding. So with any luck at all, the project will come in under what we think our budget might be, and be able to get some funding that way. And then it's a matter of how soon does WD get us the money? And there is a pocket of dollars there for sure. So it's just whether it falls in line with the parameters of the funding itself. So hopefully, perhaps next year, if all goes well, might be able to start on some of it next year, possibly.
Yes, I understood that.
Okay.
I was more interested in this pocket of money for signage and that.
The signage one, Kim, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is that obviously we will have to have some semblance of what our signage is going to look like, what design we want, where it's going to be, what signage we have. But I do see that, and Jen and Paul can correct, I do see that will be coming through the summer. And I would anticipate that if things went according to plan, that we may be able to see some new signage in place this fall. I guess I'm being too optimistic, but that's kind of my timeline on it, Councillor Bowden, is that we might be able to see something by the end of construction season 21 in terms of signage. And as the mayor alluded to, the downtown redevelopment will be a large project, but optimistically, if things went according to plan and the feds were cooperative, I could see downtown in 2022 being a construction site. So
yeah, no, I realize that with WD and with any project, I think a person needs to have some sort of target date, which of course can be moved as things require and that sort of thing. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from council? Okay, I guess with that, you folks have your direction. We look forward to hearing from you in the future. And I know it's a fairly tight timeline, but of course, with the election coming forward in the fall, I think this council would like to see, some kind of a completed report before then, not to add any pressure to you.
Great. Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for taking your time, and we look forward to meeting in the future. Thank you so much. With that, I would entertain a motion that council thank the representatives from 818 Studio Limited for their update on the Hannah Community Development Project. Thank you, Councillor Bowden. All in favor? And that is carried. That takes us to item 3.2, Hannah Spray Park Committee. I see Mr. Rabb has been sitting patiently waiting. Mr. Rabb, I'm going to just turn it over to you. Welcome this morning. Thank you for taking time to join us.
Thank you very much for having me. We sent out a report all councillors should have received as a bit of an update. So I'm just going to do a quick oversight of that and then open it up for questions at the end if you're okay with that game plan. So right now our goal with the Hannah Spray Park is to have it completely operational during the summer of 2021. Right now, as you guys can hopefully see, the spray pad is complete. The fixtures are installed. The garage package that houses 2 washrooms and the pump house facility is erected. The hope with the garage area washroom facilities is that it's completely finished. All interior painting fixtures installed by the end of April is our goal on that. The pump mechanical installation is going to be completed in the springtime period, pending weather and depending any additional storms that we might get. We'll play a little bit into that timeline. After the pump is installed, the plan from PlayQuest is to come back out in June to do some final programming and to do some testing and some training with the town staff to get it operational. Our big situation that we're in right now is landscaping. The initial thought was to basically provide sod around the spray pad area to bring it to completion. After review and after discussions with a few external parties, we investigated the look of doing a rubberized pad around the spray pad and attached to the garage building. The benefit to doing a rubberized facility would be that the accessibility of the park, the cleanliness of the park, and the mechanical safety of the park would be increased by less foreign matter entering into the park area, easier time for the town staff to clean the area, and less deterioration into the washroom facilities. So the ask of what the Sprague Park is looking at is we're asking to reevaluate the decision made by the budget committee in November to readdress and look at the larger plan rather than the smaller plan that was presented. The cost difference, the original plan was approximately 24,000. The new plan, the larger plan, is 36,000. The big gain there is footprint in and out of the park area that will allow for, again, more accessibility, cleaner park area, easier of the operation. Currently, to aid in the situation, because financing is always a challenge with projects, we have submitted out for several grants. The biggest challenge with the grants right now is the timeline to hear back. Right now, our first timeline is middle of June before we hear anything back, all the way to the end of August. So the conflict there is, of course, if we don't hear anything back with those funding guidelines until middle of June to the end of summer, the project's going to get delayed. And my goal of having it completed at summer of 2021 with a grand opening towards the end of summertime prior to the change of council or re-election of council will be in jeopardy. So the ask is to take a look again at the plan structures, take a look at the funding model, and to aid in the interim to provide the go-ahead with the larger scale rubberized surface plan.
Okay. Questions from council? Yes, Councilor Jensen.
I'm just curious with that port and play, if we were decided in favor of going with the smaller footprint, is that something that can be added to in the future?
To my knowledge, it probably can. What that looks like, it might be a little bit more of a challenge of how to get them to seal properly to each other. I think from past experience, and Gwen's on the call, I'll maybe let her address that. I would imagine that the attachment of an old rubberized material to the new material might be challenging.
If I might add to that, it can be done. The difficulty is when you're doing the site prep work. A lot of that site prep work with the foundation of that area is easier when it's done all at once. And as soon as you start digging out and doing that addition on, you sometimes compromise the existing surface. So it can be done. There's some concerns with it. And you know what it's like, you build something new and then you add on, you run into issues sometimes down the road too. So the Sprague Park has asked for the larger pad in the grants that they've applied for. That would make the best use of the grant monies. But as Mr. Rabb has indicated, we will not hear back about those grants until June and August for some of them. So they've got them out. We've certainly looked at all grants available. We're just touched by time.
All right. Councilor Jensen, does that answer your question?
Yep,
Okay.
I might have more later, but that's good for now.
Thank you. Councilor Bowden?
Yes, was just wondering then, so are you implying then that if council agrees to fund the 36,000, that any funding you get from these grants will repay that to council?
That is correct. That is correct. So part of the CFIP, it is a matching grant. So the participation has to be there.
And what is the other grants? What are the other grants you're applying for?
I do believe it is in the package. There is one with Cal Tire, specific to the rubberized material. And then there's also an additional one on top of that, and the name eludes me. That one gets completed towards the end of August. So that we're not going to hear from quite some time. So
you applied for 3 grants.
That's correct.
That's the Farm Credit Corporation, Jeff, FCC.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the committee is still actively looking for grants.
Any further questions from Cal? Yes, Kim?
Just, Mr. Mayor, I think it was in Jeff's report too, that they did get a contribution from Prairie Rose, Prairie Crocus. I might have got that mixed up, but it's a small one, but it is $2,400. So they do have $2,400 of the 36 in hand right now. And so they're basically, I guess, as council's aware, in our budget, we did set aside $12,000 in our budget on the premise that the committee would raise the other 12 and we would go with the small package. Mr. Rabb and the committee are basically requesting that to be reconsidered and that we go to the larger pad at 36, and they have 2,400 raised now, and they've got some grant opportunities out and applications. And as Mr. Rabb said, if they were successful with those grants, certainly they would go towards this project. It does, the challenge is council has to understand if they make this decision to move forward to the larger one, that there are no guarantees. And that's the only, the thing that council will have to battle. But on the other side, when you look at the positives, I do believe that it is the best long-term solution for the park. And I know sometimes the long-term solutions are the most costly solutions, but I do believe it's the best long-term solution at the end of the day, and will provide the best spray park experience at the end of the day. But again, it does come at a cost, and that's where council is able to decide what level of cost and what level of service they'd like to put into it. So as you're aware, there's no decision being made today. We will bring it back at the April council meeting, for regular council meeting, for a decision. We just wanted to, I guess, give you some time to mull it over, think about it, figure out if you have any questions. Certainly ask Mr. Rabb today, and we'll have an opportunity on April 13th to make the decision. But I guess that's what I have, Mr. Mayor, and I guess I'll turn it back to you guys.
I have Councillor Dedlock, followed by Councillor Olson, and then Councillor Gould. Councillor Dedlock.
Just a quick question. In front of the washrooms, what is the measurement that it comes out for the smaller package compared to the larger package?
So the smaller package, I do believe the original plan is roughly about 6 feet. So basically sidewalk, walkway is really all that it provides. The other one, I do believe the original scope, I think it was about 24 feet. It's quite a bit bigger. So the conceptual idea there is you have a place where you can place your stuff. You can have a picnic table. You have a nice clean area to store your stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dedlock. Councillor Olson, and then Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to comment. When we talked about this at budget time, when we discussed doing it properly, it's a big asset. The town's contributed, special areas contributed, lots of private people have contributed to this. The in-person events that we've had were anywhere from $7,000 to $24,000 raised. Showed a lot of support, and we were kind of counting on that in 2020 to get something. We're not expecting another $20,000 event, but we could do something smaller, as well as companies just didn't know what their future was last year as well. A couple have come out of the woodwork with optimism in donating coming this year, so we have reached out to several of them as well. It looks like we're probably out of luck for another event this year as well. If we can, we'd certainly do something, and that also carries on if something happens with grants and we're still short. As a committee, we're going to keep trying to get it covered. Absolutely. We are optimistic for this year, just the ones that we've talked to and some of these grants that are out there for our piece of it. So it did make us uncomfortable asking for more. As everybody knows, as I had this conversation with Jeff a few times, but we'd really like to do it right. The town and so many people, including council administration, contributed. So we just want to make sure it's done right. This is a big part of it.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bowden?
I'm just wondering how many more times you might be coming back to town for Arctic Council for more money. You know, the initial outlay of $100,000. I think the filtration system was 12. You know, is there anything else that will be that you can see that might be you know, having to require more money? Have you talked to special areas? Are they interested in putting any more money towards it or not?
See, Councillor Olson has his hand up. I don't know, Mr. Rabb, it's you guys decide who would like to answer the question.
I will defer to Kyle unless you'd like me to speak to this.
I just wanted to comment. This was, oh man, 5 years ago with previous council, and I mean, it was a 50% town contribution was what was the project started as, and as things change and projects gets reduced, I mean, it's been reduced from 200,000 at that time. So I do deem it responsible. I know we're not interested in asking for more money. This is the last piece, and it's not going to stop the project if it doesn't happen. It will certainly change, I think, the appeal of it if we don't have anything like this. But I mean, we'll never
I think
predict the
we heard
future,
that
but-
before when it came for a water filtration.
Okay, thank you.
And
So Sandra, if I can interject there with the water filtration, you're talking about the rain diverter, is that correct?
yes, I believe so.
Okay, so the rain diverter was a request from the town, not necessarily from the Hannah Spray Park Committee. The original scope engineering plans did not have that part of it. The town stepped in and made the decision to add that into the design element outside of the Hannah Spray Park Committee. So this is truly the first time we've come back to you guys asking for anything in addition to the original ask.
Director
Mr. Mayor,
Zell,
I can
had
echo
some
that.
clarity.
Mr. Mayor, if I can echo that, that in fact was a recommendation by administration for the rain diverter. Very strong recommendation because of the long-term sustainability of the project. And the spray committee was very reluctant at that time because they wanted to stay within budget, as they had made a strong point of that. That was something Mr. Rabb stood very firmly on. And so that recommendation for the rain diverter was from an administration and our maintenance view.
It just seems like that would have been an obvious, or maybe not an obvious, but something that should have been included in the initial quote from the company that gave the quote to you. So
the company that provided the quote is owned by an actual engineer that signs off on his design. And we went back to the company and to the engineer to provide insight on it. And he was willing to sign the plans without it, as he deemed it unnecessary. So it wasn't necessarily a requirement. So kind of like building to code and then building to code and then some. This would be the and then some aspect of building.
thank you.
Hey, Councillor Campion, did I see your hand up? You're still muted. There you go.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Rabb, Mr. Olson too, what of the total cost of this thing, how much have they raised? It seems like the taxpayers getting stuck for everything here, and I can't see where they raised much money for this project. And I don't know where Mr. Olson gets it. It came from a previous council, because it did not.
So to answer that, Mr. Campion, the committee has raised ineffectively over $200,000 for the project. The remaining $200,000 of the project came from the town with their contribution of $100,000 and special areas with an additional $100,000 into the project. The remainder of the project dollar amount was all raised either through fundraisers or through grants into the project.
Yeah, the 200,000 that you're talking about was basically a grant given as long as we matched it and you guys got the grant from the feds or wherever. So I still don't see how much that committee has raised toward this project.
So the committee, if you're talking outside of grant funds, has raised over $100,000 into the project.
Okay. Any further questions? Mr. Neal?
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I know the question was raised, the difference between option A and option B, and I'm going to use option A as the larger option. It primarily is in the space by the between the park and the building and surrounding the building. The apron is the same on both, and so it's probably adds an additional 50 square meters around the building that can be occupied, as Mr. Rabb said, with benches or tables, and just gives more traffic area, I guess, to between the washrooms and the so that's the big difference, is around the building and between the building and the park.
So if I can simplify the ask a little bit, what I'm understanding is that the Spray Park Committee is asking that the town virtually back the funding for the larger pour in place rubber with the hopes that you get the funding to pay that back. It's a little bit of bridge financing. Is that understood?
Very much so, yes.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I will thank Mr. Rabb for taking time out this morning to come and join our council meeting. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. With that, I entertain a motion that council thanks representatives from the Hannah Spray Park Committee for their update on the Hannah Spray Park and advise the committee that their request for the town to proceed with the landscaping of the Spray Park with a rubberized pour in place service will be considered at the April 13th, 2021 council meeting. Thank you, Councillor DeBach. All in favor? And that is carried. All right, that takes us to 3.3, the Hannah Dance Association. We had Kinsey and Ronan, but I guess that's changed now to Terry. I kind of like the former descriptor. So Terry, I'm just going to turn the floor over to you. Welcome and thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, everyone. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Terry Kwashnick, and I am the current president of the Hannah Dance Association. So I guess I'll just jump into our proposal or request for you guys. So it's my understanding that there is $11,000 allocated towards a renovation project of a storage space behind the smaller dance studio in Centennial Place. So we would like to make the request to you guys for a reallocation of those funds. The storage space that is to be created at this time is not big enough to house all of our costumes and props. And therefore, we would either have to find additional storage somewhere else or ask that we continue to be able to use the space that we're currently using at the tourist booth anyway. And so because of this, we would like to make the request that the money that was to be used towards the storage area be put towards our flooring renovation in the dance studio instead, and that we still be able to use the storage area in the tourist booth. And so when a little background into this, I guess, when we first applied for the grants for our flooring, the quotes we had received were significantly lower than the price of the flooring at the time we received the money. And so because of this, we were only able to complete the larger of the two studios. We do have $9,507 left from our grant. But our new flooring quote as of the middle of January was $19,484.61. So we've already applied for one extension on this grant to try and extend it so that we can fundraise for the remaining amount. However, with current situations, we have been unable to do any fundraising, and our extension for our grant is coming up in June. And so we have just been unable to raise the remainder $9,977.61 to complete the project. So if the town would be willing to do a reallocation of those funds, and instead of going ahead with the storage area renovation, put that towards the renovation of our flooring instead. We would really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. I just asked if council has any questions. Kim, you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, not a question, but a clarification. And I guess it probably will be news to Terry as well, but council did set $11,750 aside as the matching portion of the storage area. Since that time, though, there has been dollars spent on design and engineering of that because it had to meet building code and safety code. And it had to meet fire code because it's in an external stairwell. So there is only $6,100 left. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. There is $6,100 left that has been allocated that council would have the ability to reallocate. And I guess further to that, it would always be in council's decision-making ability to say, okay, we've got $6,100 in this reserve allocated for the storage project. We would like to, if council wanted to, they could say, we're going to give you another $3,000, whatever the difference is, to, match your grant and finish the project. But that would be council's decision. I just wanted to clarify there is only $6,100 remaining at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. Councilor Bowden, did you have a question?
Yes, I was just wondering if you would be coming back for doing the renovations for the storage area again down in the future, do you think?
No, our idea is just to, because the storage space isn't enough to house all of our stuff, and we feel it would just be easier to have all of our stuff in one area. And so we would prefer just to be able to complete our flooring project and then not go ahead with the storage unit.
Yeah, and then just leave everything like you had mentioned at the VIC.
Yes.
Okay. And that will be enough space for you?
I believe so. As far as I know, yes.
Okay, so no plans. Thank you.
Okay, Kim, you have a clarification? You're muted, sorry.
Sorry, I just want to kind of open a can of worms here a little bit, just so everybody's aware. So as council's aware, Dance Association is using a room in the VIC upper floor. Stage Hannah is using the other remaining rooms upstairs. I know that Stage Hannah has been working quite diligently and actively on getting their costume bank up, getting everything organized, prepared. And I know from their point of view, they were always hoping that other space was going to open up for them in the VIC. So I don't want to necessarily rule out, Mr. Mayor, that we wouldn't ever put that storage in at Centennial Place. But I know that we have limited space, and we have two groups looking to use that space, and it may not be enough for both of the groups upstairs in the VIC. So I don't want to basically say we're going to totally forget about this storage area and it'll never come back. The money that we have spent, we do have the designs, we do have the engineered plans. So it's not necessarily a waste of money. We have that stuff there ready to go forward if we're able to move forward on that project. So it may be something that comes back to maybe not this council, but maybe another council to decide whether they want to do some storage. I just see some potential loggerheads with the VIC in the future, and this might be one way to help solve it. As Terry has said, the Centennial Place storage may not take up all of their stuff, but if it takes up a majority of their stuff and they only need a small component of the VIC, that opens up more for Stage Hannah as well. So, and just want to throw that open that door up there, because that might be something, not immediate, but it might be something in the future that becomes an issue again.
Director Snell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Warwick and Council. If I can shed a little background on this, when Centennial Place was built, the original intent was to have a storage area in that space just above the stairwell, and that got missed by the contractors and the architect. It was one of those things in a $5 million project. That's the one thing, there's always one regret in a project, that's probably it. And so that dance executive, the previous executive, looked at that, agreed to apply for that funding, and that's when council allocated that 50% towards that project. Personally, I still believe the storage is a good idea. It's an expensive renovation of space, but it would allow them to have their costumes on site, and they could have them in 2 levels. It can never store all their props, but being a theater person with a theater background, once you get one sea can, you just want another one for props. It seems you can never have enough space for props. So I'm comfortable with that, but Hannah Downs has got a need for storage of their costume space, or costumes for sure. In the perfect world, it would be nice to be able to do that now, to do that costume storage now and the flooring. But the bottom line is, for their dance program, they need the dance flooring much more than they need the storage. So parents will continue to take their costumes home. They'll make do with a makeshift storage, but the dance flooring is very important.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Any further questions? Comment, Director Armstrong?
I just have one question. With the plans that have been done, what is the size of the footprint? Not the I guess the square footage of the footprint. Is it like 24 by 24? Or just out of curiosity, I'm putting you on the spot, I believe.
Yes, you are. I'd have to look that up, Director Armstrong. I remember going back, looking at the square footage. It's a more expensive renovation, but we looked at the overall being able to put the pulleys in and double the space, because you've got all that ceiling height. That was the thing we had to keep in mind. So I remember the previous president and I went back over that. And the other consideration with the renovation was to do it in such a way that we don't impede the dance space. So there had to be a sliding door as opposed to an opening door into the studio. We still had to retain the mirrors on the wall. So that took a little bit of design consideration. So it's not an overly big space. Is it the end of the world if it doesn't get developed? No. And that's certainly the discussions I had with Hannah Downs. If it doesn't get developed and they go for another option down the road somewhere else, they're fine.
And at the end of the day, then the space will not accommodate props. Is that what I understand? No. And the current space that they're using was never intended to accommodate props. However, there are props there, whatever, they might as well use the storage. But keeping in mind that it's an old building with a angular staircase, it makes it very difficult. It's less than ideal for them to be considered prop storage, assuming that the costume storage may be able to move one day. I think their storage issue is maybe larger than just costumes.
Thank you for that.
Sorry.
Yes, this question is for Terry. And thank you for your presentation. Should council decide to extend to cover the shortage that you would be now with the understanding of $6,100 left, would the dance group be able to repay that in the future through fundraising once that is possible?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question. Are you saying, like, if you would cover the remaining cost, anything above the 61,
yes,
we would pay back? Is that?
Yeah, that's my question. Is if we were to provide the difference from what it's costing you for your flooring, and given the $6,100 that's remaining, should council agree for the difference, would the dance group be able to or agree to repay that over time?
I I believe that would be the case, because it is involving money. We would have to vote on that, obviously, but it is my understanding that yes, if you would make up the difference of whatever, that is something that we could pay back.
Okay.
Almost $5,000 is, I guess, what we're talking about. If it was 11,000,
Yeah.
we have 61 left, about $5,000. So virtually, yeah.
Yeah,
If
just
you pay back. You're asking Council Bowden if they pay back the 5,000 if we topped it up to the 11,000.
exactly, because
Okay,
we've already,
Okay, thank you. All right,
just
any
a possibility.
okay, Councillor Campion.
Yeah, we just give 68,000 to golf courses. We're worried about charging these guys 5,000.
Yeah, I know. I was just putting it out there as far as a possibility. I'm not saying that I agree with you as well. It seems pretty petty, but we have to, I think, kind of put a limit sometimes down the road. So thank you.
Any further questions? All right, thank you for your time, Terry. We really appreciate it, and we will bring this back to our council meeting on April 13th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. I would entertain a motion the council thanks representatives from the Hamilton Association for their attendance this meeting to discuss the request from the association to have the council reallocate funding from the association's storage project in Centennial Place to the purchase and installation of dance floor for the Edie Mae Duff Dance Studio, and advise the association that the request will be considered at the April 13th, 2021 regular council meeting. Thank you, Councillor Olson. All in favor? And that is carried, and I can see that there is nobody here for presentation. So that takes us to the Chief Administrative Official report. Mr. Neal, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. Obviously, COVID, not much has changed. We're in a holding pattern, I guess, right now with step 2. No indication from the province or anyone at this point in time when they will consider moving and lessening restrictions. We are certainly anticipating, now that the weather's getting nicer, we're going to be moving into more outdoor activities. I know our pickleball group has already cleared up the outdoor rink and are out playing pickleball outdoors. We've got the tennis nets up for people to go play tennis. I know minor ball, minor soccer are all making plans, and I know they're a little bit challenged how to make plans still in this environment, but they are making plans, trying to move forward to be able to have a season. We are anticipating at this point in time still opening our outdoor pool for May long weekend. So things are moving forward. I just don't know when we'll hear anything from the province in terms of lessening restrictions. So not a ton has changed there. Grant updates, just good news from the federal side. I guess, as we all say, there's only one taxpayer, so we're all paying for it this way too. It's just they've doubled the federal gas tax for 2021. So that'll give us an additional $153,000 in our 21 budget. As council will recall, the plan basically for our MSI and our federal gas tax in 21 and 22, we had no plans for it. We were saving it for future larger project, whether that's in 22 or 23. So it doesn't have an immediate impact on us this year, but it will, obviously provide us with some more funds when we go to move forward on our next large infrastructure project. The other thing that's interesting that just came out, an announcement the other day, and I haven't found any details on it, again from the feds, is a rural transportation fund. So they have allocated $50 million a year for the next 5 years to a rural transportation fund. And it sounds like it's fairly flexible and fairly open, that communities can, make what best works in their community and apply for funding, whether it's running a handy bus, whether it's running a public transit like a taxi, whether it's an on-demand system. So we'll follow through with that a little bit more just to see, because as you know, we're kind of transportation can be a challenge in our community for some residents, and this might be an opportunity where we can put a proper solution in place, a long-term solution, and hopefully at the expense of another level of government. So
And just a question on that. So is that only operational, or there's no capital dollars involved with that? Is there?
I'm not 100% sure, Mr. Mayor. I believe there may be some capital involved.
Okay, because I know our handy van is it's getting a little bit long in the tooth maybe, but if we could maybe come up with a plan of that, and maybe a subsidy for the drivers that possibly could drive people to their appointments in the cities, that would go a long ways, I think, in alleviating some of the costs, because I know it is expensive, and as it should be. I mean, you can't expect people to drive to the city, spend a whole day and do it for nothing either. So I think it's important that we go down that road. I saw that in the news the other day, and I wondered if it was something that would fit for the community.
I see it, Mr. Mayor, I see it a little bit bigger than that in terms of, I see it as a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 service too, for seniors or those that don't have transportation to get groceries or medical appointments in town. So I see it potentially can be a little bit bigger project.
Absolutely.
Just Mr. Mayor, if I can add to that and reiterate what CAO Neil has said, that's the Community Services Board has been discussing the transportation need, and one of the survey that's coming out, the COVID wellness survey through our department, will touch on transportation, because we've talked about the handy van, as well as that Monday to Friday in-town transportation being a need, and the fact that it's done in other communities quite successfully. So we want to steal good ideas from other communities and make our community better. So we've discussed it briefly at Community Services Board as well. So thank you.
The last thing, Mr. Mayor, just again, just what council wants is more property, but the owners of the old Lutheran church on the corner of 3rd Street and 2nd Avenue West, as council's aware, they are no longer operating their business, and they have reached out to myself just in wondering if there's any interest from the town to purchase that building. We haven't got into any discussions regarding cost or anything. I told them my personal opinion was I don't think there will be interest, but I said I would have to discuss that with council. At the end of the day, if you want me to pursue it, Mr. Mayor, I guess I can pursue it and negotiate a price and bring something back to see if it is satisfactory to council, or I can just tell them there's no interest at this time. And I'm kind of looking for a little bit of direction here.
My comment would be if they want to fire sale it, put it on the open market for a fire sale. That'd be my comment. But Councillor Campion, do you have a comment?
Yeah, make them an offer as low as you can get her. We'll give it to the dancing for storage. Good building for that.
Councillor Olson?
Yeah, I'd mimic Mayor's thoughts of attack a private sale first.
Okay, no, I that's perfectly understandable, and I think they were, and I don't want to speak for them. I think they were just maybe looking at the easy out. Well, if I can deal with the town, we don't have to deal with realtors or any other offers. So certainly I will pass that on to them at this point. The other thing, just in terms of the tax recovery properties, we are moving ahead with some of those. Some of them, the land titles has changed, and Mr. Wallace has got some for sale signs up on a couple of the properties. And we've had some discussions. There's still a couple of properties that land titles have not changed on, but I'm anticipating that will be changed on prior to the April council meeting. And I know that we are going to have, at least one offer on the Knobloch property for council to consider at the April 13th meeting, and we haven't even listed it. So so there is some things moving in regards to those properties. And we'll be talking more about those, in camera at the April 13th meeting. And I guess if there's any other questions, council may have.
Okay, Councillor Jensen, then Councillor Olson.
I'm just curious if you know what the value might be for that old Lutheran church there on 2nd Avenue. I know it's a bit of a thorn in the side to the folks who own the property next to it. So I'm just kind of curious.
Councillor Jensen, I'm sorry at this point. I wouldn't feel comfortable suggesting. Certainly we could email out to you what the assessed value is, but the assessed value may not be what market value is in this circumstance. So I couldn't give you a fair estimate at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Olson.
I've been approached by somebody for a property the town took over that has an unlivable home on it. And I told them I can take any offer, present it. Do we evaluate if there's an appetite of, a $1,000 offer on a property with the promise that it would get cleaned up, or is that just immediately out of the question? We've never been for a massive fire sale. I've never been through any of that. I don't know if that's normal.
Mr. Mayor, or Councillor Olson, we'll chat about that on April 13th. I'm pretty sure you and I are on the same page in terms of who's been chatting with you and about what property. And I've basically said, put a proposal forward, put an offer forward on that particular property. I think we would be open, council would be open to anything. I think the main objective council would be to get that property cleaned up and proper, satisfactory property, residential property. And at the end of the day, if something's developed on it, that's an added bonus to the community and to us as far as assessment. The fear that a lot of people have, and it's a fear that even we have administratively, is when you get into demolition, and doing demolition, according to occupational health and safety rules, in terms of dealing with hazardous materials and all that, is it can be very expensive and you can unfortunately find some surprises as you're going through it. So I know there's some hesitancy from some people to do the demolition, and they would prefer to have someone else do the demolition, or else in this case, get the property at a very, very low price and then have some flexibility in their own budget to be able to deal with the demolition and the potentially hazard material surprises that may come their way. So I would encourage anyone, if they have an offer, even if they think it's low or it's insulting, to put it forward.
It's still ultimately up to us as council to accept or reject any proposals. So, yeah.
So that's it, Mayor, unless there's any questions.
Yeah, I'll open it up. Any further questions for Mr. Neal? All right, thank you for that. Rhonda, do we normally not accept the receive it? Okay, good, thank you. All right, that takes us to 6.1, Town of Hannah RV parking bylaw. I am sure Mr. Neal and Mr. Mole are probably wanting to present this document to us. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if council's had an appropriate amount of time to read through the report. Basically, in a nutshell, I know council is aware that they were approached to see if council would consider amending the bylaw to add a ability to have a paid or a permit to park on the street for the summer season, so May to September. Basically, our Hannah traffic bylaw is the one that deals with this, and it was amended in 2007, and then it was amended again in 2014. So in 2014, council of the day wanted to review it, and basically at the end of the day made some changes to the 2007 bylaw. And those primary changes were, it used to say that you could not park your trailer on the street for more than 72 hours, and it had to be moved. Well, that was gray, because what is a move? Is a move 2 feet forward, 2 feet back? So council of the day basically felt that on-street parking for trailers is acceptable on a temporary basis to load and unload their units, but it's not to be their storage spot for the summer. So council adapted the bylaw at that point in time to basically the 48 on, 48 off. So you are able to have your RV parked on the street for 48 hours, and then it has to be removed from the street for 48 hours. That would allow people 2 days prior to camping to get it cleaned up, get it loaded, get it ready. And then when they come back from their camping trip, it still allowed them 2 days to unload, do what they needed to do, and move forward. And it also stopped basically that 72 hours, because I come 3 days before I can have it, 3 days after. And we've been operating that way since 2014. The other thing that we did add in the bylaw in 2014 was the ability to get a permit if you need it longer than 48 hours. But the permit is technically to be if you're doing renovations, repairs, something like that. It's not just to help you conveniently keep it there for another extra 2 weeks or 3 weeks. There's supposed to be some legitimacy to that point behind there. So we got the request from the Bloxhams, which would be to amend the bylaw to allow permits for people to park on the street. And administratively, we looked at a number of bylaws, different sizes. Our bylaw is very comparable, probably even maybe more generous in terms of allowing RVs on the streets. I know we didn't find any bylaw where it was any community where you were allowed to park your RV on the street for an extended period of time. And most of them were 48 or 72 in that range. Some of them are less than that. But when we looked at the request from the Bloxhams, administratively, one of the concerns that jumped out to us is there may be in certain situations in town, and I think my gut would tell me that it would be very few situations in town you could probably park an RV on the street and you would not impact anyone. But I think it's a very far and few between where you would find those areas. And my concern administratively is if we go down the road of providing a special permit and we're able to provide a special permit to, a handful of people in the community, the other people who maybe are not in the same situation for whatever reason, will be unsatisfied that they're not able to be treated the same way. And some of the things we looked at when we went through that process was not all our streets are the same width. Not all our streets have the same traffic. Not all of our streets, not all the RVs are the same size. As you know, RVs are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, there's no guarantee that on a block, is it first come, first serve if you're going to allow one per block, because you could have a block. And I use my block of 7th as an example. If 4 people had a trailer on the south side and 4 people had a trailer on the north side, our physical situation is all the same. But if you had 8 trailers there, it would become a nightmare. So I guess, the other concern we have is you don't want to have it close to any intersections, whether that's an alley, whether that's a street intersection, just for visibility. The issue, and I'll quite honestly say it, Bloxhams, are very fortunate where they live. They've got a large side yard. They have nobody across the street in terms of a residential property that aesthetically would be impacted. They are fortunate. They are close to an alley, and probably cause some sight issues from the alley. But that alley has no rear garages and probably has fairly limited traffic in it if you did a traffic count. So I know they have a special situation, but I know when we start choosing special situations, we find ourselves in trouble with some of the other residents in town who don't think that's fair. So administratively, we're looking for direction from council. Administratively, we would say we don't think amending the bylaw is the right way to go at this point in time, but if there is desire from council to move that forward, we certainly will move that forward, and we would like to maybe do some sort of public engagement or survey, or just try and ask people's feedbacks of how they feel about the existing bylaw and whether they would be comfortable with allowing permits to be parked on street. So a long story, Mr. Mayor, sorry about that, but.
No, that's good. No, that's excellent. Thoughts from council? Councillor Bowden?
I was just looking around town, and I think that there could be a possibility if there was no residential property across from them, like Railway Avenue, or like around the old primary school property, just for that limited period of time. And I think there would have to be some support with some of the residents, also, around south of the arena, or, any other area around town where there is not residential property across the road from them. But, the fact that there is a permit that people can already apply for, perhaps, is there flexibility depending on their situation? I guess, maybe that permit may be suitable for the block zones.
Okay, thank you. Any further thoughts? Yes, Councillor Olson and Councillor Campion.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with a handful of exceptions. You're right. I think honestly, there's only a dozen properties in town that it might work for. Bloxham's happens to be one of them that I don't feel would impede anything. It's more administrative work, of course, for administration and council to approve each one as they come in, but it'll be hard to put guidelines on I'd call it a normal street. Even as Councillor Bowden says, even if there's not residential across, if it's a standard street, I don't think it fits real well, but there is a handful that it wouldn't impede anything. I'd be okay with analyzing them on a one-off basis for a longer term permit.
Thank you. Councillor Campion.
No, I'm not in favor of changing this at all. We set that bylaw. You start making exceptions now, and people will start abusing it all over town. And then you're gonna get kids getting hurt and everything, and no, I'm not in favor of this at all, so.
Okay, Councillor Jensen.
I was just, as one living by the Bloxham residence, and we do have a rear-facing garage there, and there is a fair bit of traffic. I think it's mostly school traffic that goes up and down the alleys, or going back and forth. But we've been here 25 years, and I'm pretty sure there's been an RV out there pretty well the entire time that we have resided here, and it hasn't ever really been an issue. So I guess I'm just wondering if this is the only time, I guess, aside from 2014, when the bylaw was assessed and amended, that we've had people come forward, or Bloxham's the only ones that have come forward with a request for this. Is this, like, I'm just thinking if it's one out of the entire community and they've kind of been parking their RV there all this time anyway, is it worth the extra administrative headache for one-offs?
Good call, thank you. Director Moore.
Yes, I'd just like to add that the majority of complaints that come in, when we do receive complaints, if I haven't done administrative control through patrolling, are people concerned with the position of larger RV units on the street for driving and sight lines close to corners, those type of things. Also, I have had complaints over the years of RVs that are so large that when you have a lot of kids within the community or within that block, kids tend to play on the street a little bit and they can't see them, and it's a concern for that. So, and aesthetically, as CEO O'Neill said, when you get a number of these 25 to 35 foot units on a street, pretty soon you've got a wall of RVs that you can't see anything. A normal vehicle has glass in it, a car, a truck, whatever, and you have a better chance of seeing somebody coming out between parked vehicles than you do a great big solid block of RVs. So it is, to me, it is a dangerous thing. The other issue that happens, that I can see happening with a number of larger units on the street, is that we can't go with a lesser enforcement issue under the Traffic Safety Act for detached units. So you start putting a truck in front of a 35-foot vehicle, now you're into the neighbor's yard, and I could just see it snowballing. Administratively, if we allowed this to happen through a permitting system, yeah, that on one hand would make our job a little easier, but on the other hand, I can see it being a much more difficult situation. And who decides, and by what measurement do we decide where these exceptions are going to take place? I think fundamentally we are very generous in our bylaw. All of communities I looked at, a lot of them even have a restriction of no time limit. You can unload and then you must remove immediately, or load and remove, be on your way. So I didn't see any that had any kind of permitting system. We're the only ones that I came across that had a flexibility to allow people to do a little work on their unit or an extended cleaning or whatever. And we set a maximum of 1 week on there. And I've had a couple of RV owners come back twice a year and ask for that. And, maybe they're pushing it a little bit, but they normally don't go past the week. And that's been my experience on it. But I just think it is, aesthetically, it's not that pleasing. And from a safety standpoint, I think this would open up a big can of worms.
Thank you for that. Any further thoughts? I kind of agree a little bit in all comments that were made. The Bloxhams are in certainly a unique position in the community where, it's probably one of the only places within the town without a field or something across the street. So again, you start going one-offs, and even if it fits within whatever parameters are set and whoever decides that, no disrespect to our residents, but they see these RVs parked there for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time and don't even have the understanding that there is a one-off special permit to park there. People will just take their own liberties and start doing that. So again, I think the way it is now, I think it's working personally. I think it's pretty, and we're not, we're fairly lenient in what it is, which I think is that's what makes the community great, is having a little bit of leniency within that. So I don't know, consensus, does council want to leave this kind of the way it is? Councilor Bowden?
I believe the reason they came forward was, as Councillor Jensen had mentioned, they had been parking there forever, pretty much, and last year they received a fine. So I guess that's all the more reason to follow the bylaws and ensure they're being enforced, so that everybody is treated the same, sort of thing. So and I agree that the permit, I was not aware that there was a permit, and the 7 days is a good option to start, and should they need more, well, maybe that could be negotiated or some other agreement come up forward.
Director Moe?
Just a correction, Councillor Bowden. There was no fine involved. It was a warning.
So, Mr. Mayor, just one last. Okay.
Yeah, let Director Olson.
Mr. Mayor, the fire chief also raised some concerns, and as a deputy fire chief, when you have units parked and we have a structure fire, now we have another thing that we have to look after. A lot of times those units can catch fire on their own. And as far as public works go, we did have a water break where a gentleman unhooked his stock trailer on the street and then he was gone and no keys. Like we couldn't get it. It was in our road. So I think we're pretty lenient with what we got. And for street cleaning, for anything, I know people want signs out, but if these units are parked there, we can't get around them. So just those concerns to consider too. Just thought I'd throw that in.
No, thank you for that. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, just the comment in regards to Bloxham's. Yes, we have been lenient with them leaving their RV there because of the situation they're in. And we haven't had any complaints from any residents, but it's like anything else. When we do enforcement and we go out and we tell other people that their trailer, and we've just been warning people, but here's your warning, your trailer has only been on, has to be on for 48, off for 48. As is human nature, they go around and they say, well, that trailer hasn't, so that's where last year we had complaints about the Bloxham trailer, and that is why we issued them the warning.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so I would guess, Councilor Bowden.
Sorry, my apologies. I was told they were fine. So my apologies.
Okay, so I guess show of hands, I'm just going to throw it out there. Consensus is leave the bylaw as it is. Show of hands, yes. Okay, I guess that's your answer.
Mr. Mayor, the thing that I will throw out though is if, depending on how involved council wants to get, if we basically said that council would review and look at special considerations or special requests, we could bring those to a council meeting and council could decide. It would be nice to have some parameters, but
well, yeah, on the permit, I don't know, is it really just specifically for renovations? I guess that's the question. If that's what it is, maybe we need to look at that and rewrite that, what that entails, put the parameters around that a little broader in that text context. Director Moe?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when we came up with the permitting system there, I was based on a few requests from people saying, hey, I've got some, my water system is broken. I've got to repair. I don't have a place to put my unit. I don't have any room on my property. And therefore, can we have an extension of time on the street to do that? And I thought that was a reasonable way to go. And so we introduced and designed that. For the sake of parking, an extra time, I didn't see that was fair. I think that the bylaw covered that off quite nicely, and it's quite generous. So I didn't see that as a reason to issue a permit. So that would be the situation. But
I guess not to go ahead, Councilor Campion.
Yeah, remember too, we have people in town who own property that rent out storage space.
Yeah, really good point.
We're stepping on their toes too, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Councilor Campion. Yeah, I guess, from the other point of view too, if you do take out a permit for renovating your RV, it's not like we're going in there and making sure that they're actually renovating. So, it's an honor system. So I'm not trying to direct people to do certain things, but I guess I just did in saying that. So I would say, I think on behalf of council, I think consensus is that we just kind of leave it the way it is. It seems to be working okay, and unfortunately for the Bloxhams, it's not. It's a unique situation for them. So, all right, that's excellent. So with that, I would entertain a motion that council will accept the Hannah RV on-street parking report for information. Thank you. Let's go, Councilor Stickle. All in favor? That is carried. That takes us to 6.1, request to honor Doug Todd. Mr. Neal, would you like to speak to that?
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, as you see, Gail Smig has been in discussions with myself in regards to wanting to recognize Mr. Doug Todd for his contributions to our community, and had suggested changing the street from Hannah Crescent to Todd Crescent or something similar in that regard. In my discussions with her, I have indicated that, I respect what she's trying to do. Just the street signage on a sign that's already legally got a name can be quite challenging because everything's on land titles is, Hannah Crescent. So there's a lot of change that has to happen there. And I don't know, I'm not technological smart enough to know what the process is for Google Maps and these others in terms of how the change happens for street names. I know that council, and it's probably many years ago, made Center Street McCrae Drive north of 2nd. But that is basically just an honorary name. Everything else is still legally Center Street. And so that is an option as well. The other option that I thought might be more appropriate is whether we dedicated the park area that is in the center of that crescent as Doug Todd Memorial Park, or some sort of similar name to that. Could be signed. It could have a bench, with a sign on it, all those types of things. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I guess if council believes that they'd like to follow through and recognize Mr. Todd, that, we decide which direction we want to go. And I think it's important to have some feedback from the residents in Hannah Crescent in terms of their feelings. My gut would tell me that everyone there would think that it was a good idea, and be very happy to see something done to recognize Mr. Todd. And I guess I'm just throwing that open now to council if they've got any thoughts on the request.
Okay, just before we go any further with council, Director Armstrong, do you know what's entailed with like a street naming regarding Google Maps or Apple Maps or anything like that? Do you know, is there a form or anything like that? Do you know, is it a?
I don't have any idea what I'm doing, which is quite possible, or it's very, very frustrating because you claim ownership of a physical space, not necessarily a street. So we as in Town of Hannah, under my account, have claimed ownership of the physical buildings in town, and it continually moves Centennial Place to Drumheller. Always fighting over that in terms of it just shows up in the Drumheller postal code. So I go into the account and change it back to Hannah. So changing of a street on the maps. And then I don't know if like there's Google Maps and there's Apple Maps, and I think they use different data. I would have to do more research on that. The other one is Main Street. I think it's legally just 2nd Avenue. I don't think it's legally Main. Same as McCrae and Center.
Okay. Well, I think you answered a question with obviously Centennial Place. The Director Lund.
Just for information, it is difficult to change the name of a street. We have, when the long time ago council didn't name Shaker Crescent, Stevens Crescent. And so legally, land titles refers to them as Hamilton and Hampstead because they just picked names. So we've had to kind of argue with land titles a few times that we've changed the name and they don't like it and they don't want to acknowledge it. So I know that it is not an easy process to change it after it's already been named.
Okay, awesome, thank you for that. Director Moe?
Yeah, I would just add to that, for example, Highway 2 is still Highway 2. It has, the Queen Elizabeth Highway, but it is still Highway 2 technically under all legal registration. So they don't write down Queen Elizabeth Highway, they write down Highway 2.
Okay. Thoughts from council? Okay, Councilor Olsen.
Yeah, it sounds like a name change is going to be a lot. I certainly like the idea of a memorial, whether it's something in the park, a couple unique trees, like those oak trees that are 400 years or something. Something recognizing it is certainly appropriate for what he's done.
Councilor Devlock and then Councilor Campion.
agree. I think the park would be a much nicer, a nicer honor for the family to have is a park rather than a street, I think. I think it could, like Kyle said, the trees, and you can do so much more with it, and it would mean, I think, a little bit more to the family as a park than the street.
Thank you, Councillor Cappy, and then Councillor Bowden.
Yeah, I would like to see the park done up nice with a bench and a sign there. It's right in front of where he lived, so, I think that's a great idea to do it that way. I'm not in favor of the street thing at all.
Okay.
So.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Cappy. Councillor Bowden?
I'm just wondering if the family has been asked what their preference would be, if maybe council could give them a couple options like, the park or trees or things of that nature, and see what their preference would be or choice. If it's in his name, and that his family, I think, should have some input into it. And maybe they have already.
Yeah, Councillor Bowden, I'm not sure. I didn't ask Mrs. Smig if she's had any conversations with Mrs. Todd. They could have, they could not have, I'm not sure, but we could certainly follow up with that.
Mrs. Smig is my aunt, and I don't think there's been any conversation with Mrs. Todd regarding this. I think this is just an honor system for her. So, Councillor Stickle.
Yes, I like the idea of the park. I think that would be very nice in honoring Todd.
Mr. Neal, so was that option relayed to Mrs. Smig regarding the park? Oh,
yes.
Okay.
And in her letter, she does indicate that she thinks that that's an acceptable option. So
okay, and it's relatively decent timing, obviously. With our previous 818 Studio Limited, looking at doing Wayfair signs, we could maybe incorporate a nice new Wayfair sign on that park that honored Mr. Todd for all the great work he's done. I think we have.
Yeah, currently, Mr. Mayor, just for council's info, the informal name of the park administratively is Block 58. So it doesn't have a very exciting park name, and this would certainly change that. So
excellent. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, that's good. I think we have our direction. Looks like yes. Okay. I would entertain a motion that council accept for information letter from Mrs. Gail Smig, proposing the memorial tribute to honor Mr. Todd for his community service to the town of Hannah, and direct administration to investigate options for council's consideration as a future regular council meeting. Thank you, Councillor Bowden. All in favor? And that is carried. That takes us to 6.3, Alberta Pioneers Association of Hannah and District request for assistance. Mr. Neal.
Mr. Mayor, short here, the senior circle, for probably a better understanding versus the Alberta Pioneers Association of Hannah, but they obviously last year they were unable to operate their hall. They have expenses like everybody does in terms of utilities, insurance, R&M. They weren't able to host a casino. So they did lose. It did cost them just under $12,000 last year to operate the hall, even though nobody could use it. They've reached out to me wondering whether council would consider providing them with a subsidy or with some dollars to offset this. This is where it gets, a little difficult, a little tight at this point in time, even though they did lose $12,000, and, I'm sympathetic that they lost $12,000. Still at the beginning of 2021, they still had $46,000 in the bank. So I think they're still in a sound financial position. So I would like to, I'm throwing this out there for council to consider and to think, but at the end of the day, if we bring it back to the April 13th council meeting, Mr. Mayor, administration's direction would be to deny their request at this time based on their solid financial situation. If they were in a different situation, you know, I think we'd have to approach it in a little different manner, but that's just my thought. I wanted to present it to you today in case you have any questions, but allow you to think about it prior to coming back for a decision.
Okay, Councillor Bowden.
I just kind of like to reiterate what Councillor Campion had mentioned. We just gave away $68,000 and they had 128,000 or over 120,000 in the bank. So how does that make this different? I guess that they're going to use it for other purposes. Does the senior circle have any plans for what they want for the any sort of subsidization, or just to recoup their losses?
Councillor Bowden, just a couple of things. They want to, I think, just get any type of assistance that we would be prepared to provide. Whether it was $12,000 that would offset their entire subsidy, whether it was $1,000. I think they're just reaching out to see if we would have some dollars that we could provide them to offset that operation. We know, unfortunately, 2021 is probably not going to be much different situation for them. Hopefully later this summer on, you know, things are different and they can have some rental opportunities and start to incur some income. And the other, you know, that's my comment around it. And I think in terms of, they have not expressed that they've got any significant renovation plans or any significant upgrading plans that they would be needing to save dollars for.
Okay. Any further questions? I guess my question would be, are they paying property taxes? I didn't see that on there as a line item on the financial statements.
I don't know, Councillor, Corporate Services Director may be able to look that up while we're here, but I don't believe they pay taxes. And as I mentioned in the report, the town has subsidized their water and sewer utility bill as well. So
okay, I guess, you know, okay, that's fair enough. I just thought we do have a grant in lieu of taxes for the Masonic Lodge and the Hannah Roundhouse Society. So if that was an option that council wanted to look at, I guess that's one way we do help other people. So we could look at that. I know it's small, but okay. Director Lund.
Sorry, I can't access it right now, but I will have it for the April 13th meeting.
Okay. I'm assuming they probably don't, it wasn't on their balance sheet or financial statement, so I'd assume that it's not a line item, but unless it's tied in with something else. So okay, so council, yeah, Mr. Neal has given us kind of their recommendation. Is everybody consensus wise are okay with that recommended motion, or what are the thoughts?
Well, ultimately, Mr. Mayor, at the end of the day, that's probably the direction or the recommendation we'll put forward. At the end of the day, on the 13th, council can amend or make the decision that they feel is the best decision.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion that council accept the letter from the Alberta Pioneers Association of the Hannah District Senior Circle requesting financial assistance for the Association for Information and Direct Administration to bring this request to the April 13th, 2021 regular council meeting for consideration. Thank you, Councillor Deadlock. All in favor? That is carried. All right, that takes us to council roundtable. I'll just go in order of what I have on my screen. If you have anything you want to bring up, Councillor Olson, followed by Councillor Deadlock.
No, I don't believe I have anything to be discussed.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Olson? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to thank you for that. Councillor Deadlock and then Councillor Bowden.
I just had one resident show concern about some signs around the school. So hopefully we can bring that up at council the beginning of next month. Just school zone signs. I'm not.
Yeah, Councillor Deadlock, I did get your email. We didn't have a meeting, a director's meeting on Monday with weather the way it was and people tied up doing things. So certainly we will chat about it next week and see what we can do. If I haven't even had a chance myself to drive that particular street and see what's there for signage.
I did, and actually from the school stop sign heading west, there's no signage and that's where, and there's a bit of a curve in the road, and that's where the concern is. And I think she said there's 14 or 16 children that live in that
block,
like in those houses. Yeah.
The other challenge that's always interesting for us, Councillor Deadlock, is if you own a property there where the sign needs to be located, there's no boulevard on that street. So you're basically then putting a sign. It may technically be town property, a little bit on the north side of their sidewalk, but at the end of the day, nobody wants a sign in their front yard, and that's another challenge we have. So
Something to look at.
yeah, we'll take a look at it, certainly, Councillor Deadlock.
Okay,
That's all I've got right now.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any questions for Councillor Deadlock? Councillor Bowden.
Well, not questions, but just comments. I would just like to congratulate the Deadlock family on the positive work they're doing with the apartment complex. I did have a resident that was just thrilled with all the positive changes they've made. So I just wanted to let council know that there are residents that are thrilled with all the positive changes going on in the former Crawl apartments and now the Abbey Way. So I just like to pass that on and say congratulations and good job.
Thanks. We're having a good time in there. It's fun.
Any further questions for Councillor Deadlock? Okay, thank you for that. That takes us to Councillor Bowden, followed by Councillor Stick.
I had a couple residents come to me and ask, since we're kind of looking at restocking the CN reservoir, and I believe water is still drawn from it for the golf course, whether or not there's going to be any restrictions on it. I also had another question regarding who is the electrical contractor for the town, and yeah, just whether or not any of the work that is coming up for electrical work will be opened for bids for other contractors as well.
I'll speak to the water side for the golf course. I don't believe there are any restrictions. The golf course does have backup water secured from the Helmer Dam. We actually installed the golf course. When I say we, at that point in time, I was part of the golf course executive, and we had installed extended a pipeline from the corner of Fox Lake Trail and Palliser Trail north, just before the Catholic Cemetery, and then it goes across the road to the east and into a dugout that we have there, so we can pump water from there. So we're responsible when it comes to that. We won't draw it down to the point of it being completely empty, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that's with the expectation that we're going to be in a drought situation and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Very well aware of that. Yeah, that was a condition actually for building the golf course. Was that Councillor Campion?
I believe that the Alberta Environment Regulation, they can only draw a certain percentage.
Right.
I think it's 15% of the water.
Right. Yeah.
Because they had drawn it more at one time, and that's why they blocked the underneath the East Bridge.
Yeah.
Because they were taking more than their share of what they were supposed to have.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to address Councillor Bowden's questions about electrical contractor, the town does not have an electrical contractor. We do probably use one of our electricians more often than the other, but whenever we have a large project that we're going to do, we tender that out and bid that out, and all of our local electricians have the opportunity. Generally, the other stuff we do is either immediate R&M stuff and stuff that's small, and because we have a electrician that we've worked with for many years that provides us good service and quick, fast service, we tend to probably use that person a little bit more for those, just based on our history of good working relationship.
I believe that's Doug's Electric, is that not?
Yes, yes.
And I know there are new electricians, and they're all kind of feeling the pinch. And I think it would be nice that we could maybe switch that up a bit and maybe try some of the other electricians in town and give them some of that opportunity as well.
One of the other things we do consider, Councillor Bowden, when we are looking at doing work to, and right, wrong, or otherwise, is that Doug's Electric is the only one in town that is an electrician that has a storefront that is paying taxes. So we do try to give that a little bit benefit of the doubt as well, because they've got a stronger commitment into our community from that perspective. The others are either based out of their home or out of the town itself, and don't pay taxes directly for their business. So we can certainly look at using some others. Like I said, we fall into a rut just like you would if you had an electrician or a plumber that you have a good working relationship with and does good work for you. So we can certainly open that up. It just gets to be more time consuming looking at different projects and different, sending quotes on smaller projects and waiting to hear back. So.
Yeah, at least, some of these guys that are working out of their home, they're also paying taxes as well. So at least if they could be considered would be, a nice opportunity, I think. So
Director Snell, I think, has a comment as well.
Thank you, Mayor Warwick. We do, in fact, a lot of the electrical work does come from our public facilities, and we do, in fact, contact other electrical contractors on what I consider a fairly regular basis. We've just gone through the LED lighting upgrading, and that was quite an onerous bidding process. And we actually were turned down by several electricians that said that it was just too much to put the bid together and it was too big of a job for them. So, Doug's Electric did benefit from that recent project, but he was also the only one that stepped up with the full quotes that we had to send on to MCCA for funding. And we do have relationships with our tradespeople in our community. Certainly there are tradespeople who provide much better service to the town and put us on a priority list. We have waited days for repairs that are necessary for our open public facilities. So we do have a tendency, as CA O'Neill indicated, those that provide great service to the town and value that relationship and are there, they'll drop other jobs to come on an emergency for us. We do have a good working relationship with them, but we have in fact engaged other electricians recently and reached out to them. So we continue to do that. Any big jobs, we'll do the quoting system as well.
okay. Well, this individual is formerly a mine employee that has some experience from there. So perhaps I will get them to maybe drop their information off with the town and for consideration.
Well, if they have a business license, that's the first list I go to when I'm looking for doing quotes and putting out requests for proposals. We look at who has a business license in the town. If they've got a serious business and a serious shingle up and they want to do business, then we do approach them.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Councilor Bowden, or comments?
Oh, we had a meeting at the clinic, and Dr. Fortnite is still doing the lunch hour testing, and with all the additional expenses that they are seeing with gloves and masks, I think the prices have doubled, but they were still able to come under budget. They had about $38,000 surplus this year with staff working from home, and yeah, so things are going fairly decent with the medical clinic. And other than that, I have no other information.
Okay. Questions for Councilor Bowden? Okay, thank you for that. That takes us to Councilor Stickle and then Councilor Campion. Councilor Stickle.
Yes, as of Sunday, we have the lodge is open. It's not in lockdown anymore. It's COVID clear, as I understand, but we do have 2 cases popped up in Oyen. So now they're under lockdown. So other than that, I have no complaints about the town or anything, so that's the end of my report.
So, Mr. Mayor, just a comment so everybody's clear. So when Councillor Stickles says that the lodge is out of quarantine and ready to go and COVID-free, I believe all of the residents and staff were tested twice, Councillor Stickle, and all of the results were negative. So
yes,
we feel very comfortable that COVID is not in the lodge, and hopefully they can now live a little bit more of a normal life than they had been stuck in their rooms for a while. So that's great news.
and hopefully the employees will soon be all get their shots. It hasn't happened yet, but it's supposed to be happening soon. So, and the second round for the residents.
Any further questions for Councillor Stickle? I just have one, Councillor Stickle. So out of the those positive tests, was there anybody hospitalized out of that?
Out of which?
Like the positive tests, they had people that tested positive. Was there anybody that got sick and went to hospital?
No.
No, none of that. Okay.
No.
Okay, just a question. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you for that. That takes us to Councillor Campion and then Councillor Jensen. Councillor Campion.
Yeah, COVID's all in my house, so here it was. It's gone now, but yeah, I never thought I would survive that shit, but I did. My wife has gotten over it. She's a lot better, so. And I got nothing else to report.
Okay. You're feeling okay?
Yeah, I feel great. Yeah,
Good.
I never did feel bad, so.
Okay, good.
I think it's a joke.
Good to hear. You're not alone, Councillor Campion. Any questions for Councillor Campion? Okay, thank you for that, and be well, get well, whatever, or not, whatever, stay the same, right, whatever it is. Councillor Jensen.
I don't have a lot to report. It's just kind of the same old, and not too eventful, which sometimes is nice. But I'm sorry, I had to take an important call and missed what I had, well, I really wanted to know what was going on with the senior circle. So I certainly don't expect a whole long overview. If I could just kind of get a consensus of what was kind of discussed and what everybody's thoughts were, I'm sorry.
Financially, they're in pretty strong position. The recommendations from administration would be to not assist. That may be what's going to be brought back to council on the 13th. I raised the question whether or not they had a grant in lieu of taxes. We're not sure of that. I suggested maybe that might be because we do that for the Masonic Lodge and for the Roundhouse Society. I thought maybe that might be a good start for them if that's the case. Other than that, there's I don't know if I missed anything, Mr. Neal. You can, maybe I do.
No, I think that Councillor Jensen, it was a little bit of a mixed bag. I think some appreciate and respect that they've got a fairly solid bank account and not anything that we're aware of pressing in terms of major repairs or renovations that are going to take a significant portion of that. But I know that there was also some, my interpretation was there was also some sympathy that if there was a way we could assist them in some small fashion, that council was open to that.
Okay. I guess my 2 bits would be, I do like the grant in lieu of taxes idea. That was something that kind of popped into my mind. Just because we have offered that sort of assistance to other nonprofit organizations and understanding that it is tough times. And I did have something else in there, but it's gone. So I can whisper it in an email, but I think that was kind of an idea. Oh, just their financial situation. I guess it does kind of look good now, but if you think a year or two, like they will not be able to sustain themselves for long on what they do have in the bank. So
thank you. Director Lund, I think, had something to add to that.
I was able to look it up and they are exempt. So they do not pay taxes at all.
Okay.
Pool, potential, anything.
Although it is still something that you can consider as council is whatever the taxes perhaps could be on that we could offer a grant of that same value to them, which would be kind of, you know, a similar subsidy as we do provide for those other entities. So just that is an option. Thank you, Director Land. Anything to add? That was it, Councillor Jensen?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay, any questions for Councillor Jensen?
Just a comment, or I guess that's a bit of a question, Councillor Jensen. Just curious, how are things going at the library since you've been opened? Things going well, and is the public, I guess, being fairly receptive to you being open?
Yeah, things have been going really well. I've been in there a couple times for signing days, and they've had anywhere between 24 and over 30 patrons coming in through the day. I've heard a lot of feedback on curbside. Yeah, it seems to be warmly accepted, and they're keeping pretty busy. So that's good.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you for that. For me, it was kind of a quiet couple of weeks. I did forward the podcast that was done with the CBC. I thought they did a very good job during the interview, kind of covering all the things. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, you could. Lori, did you put a link to that on our?
Not yet. I haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay, sorry. Yeah,
about it. Is it hugely time sensitive?
No, not at all.
I'm not talking months, but.
Okay, no. I said that we would that we do that. So I want to have a little bit of integrity with that. Thank you, Councillor Bowden.
Yes, I did listen to it the other day, and it was very well done. I greatly appreciate the work that you did on providing information about our town on it, and it was with the link that I'm not sure. I think Chris, you had shared it. Anyways, it was shared and I watched it, and it was very, very well done. Thank you.
Yeah, they actually, it was nice that it wasn't skewed one way or the other. It was really an open conversation. Those are the ones that actually get the truth out, which is kind of nice. Appreciate that. So if there's any questions for me, I'll take them now, but it was a very quiet month. Awesome. Okay, thank you for that. Well, if there's nothing else, I guess we can declare this meeting adjourned at 10:34 a.m. and we will see folks back here in 2 weeks, I guess it is, April 13th. So thank you for that. Job well done. Thanks administration for again making this as seamless as possible. We appreciate it.
So Mr. Mayor, just before everybody does, we will be still virtually on April what day is it? April the 13th.
13th, yeah.
So hopefully sooner than later we won't be, but at this point the plan is virtually to be April 13th as well.
Okay, awesome. Thanks folks. Take care. Have a great couple of weeks.
Thank you.